Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of what's the show's name? HOPStart. That's right. I've really enjoyed myself while interviewing people, and today we're going to look at the digital marketing, company agency called Estoot. I actually shot with them a couple of weeks ago, and let's go ahead and see what they have to say.
Hi, I'm Navi Brar and I'm the founder of Estoot.
Thank you so much, Navi, for taking time out of your day to let us interview you. So let's just start with the basics. What is Estoot?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Estoot is a digital marketing agency. We started 2 years ago as a social media agency primarily, but we have moved a lot into video production now. So that's the big chunk of what we do.
Oh, that's interesting. And why Estoot? Like, why the name Estoot?
So it's a funny story. I just wanted, I was really focused on the aesthetics of the logo and I really wanted double O in the name. And so I just wanted to do a word play on something which is clever, witty. So the word astute, and we just changed the spelling.
So, in the current landscape, there exists a whole ton of digital marketing media, like firms like that. So how do you feel like you need to differentiate yourself when you're selling it to, potential customers?
Yeah. So I think the biggest strength I think we have is our team. Both Vrinda and I, the partners, we have we're both US educated. I worked in the US for about 5-6 years before moving back. So I think we bring a very global perspective as well as the level of professionalism that we provide. So that kind of is what sets us apart. That's what I think, that's what clients appreciate in us. We work with a lot of international brands now and we give them, the same level of service they would get internationally at a fraction of a cost.
Okay, that's interesting. So, you said you worked in the US for 5-6 years. So is your background then this only, like social media marketing?
No, not at all. I was in finance. I did consulting for KPMG. So I worked in New York for 5 years before moving here.
So then the start. I'm going to call it a startup because I guess that's how you built it, right? So the startup, when you came over here, so what are some of the challenges you faced from coming from a very different environment in the US where you where you were working for someone to now suddenly working for yourself and in an Indian landscape that's very different.
Yeah. So actually, I have another company that I started before starting Estoot, which was 4 years ago now. I moved back 4 years. That's in travel. That's still running, but it's a seasonal business. So this one keeps me more busy. But it's funny because I thought travel was my passion and that's what I wanted to do. Until I started doing that, and I realized that what I enjoyed the most was the marketing side of it. And that's kind of where Estoot's idea came from. But in terms of challenges, I think basic things like people don't operate on email in this country, so that was a big adjustment. But yeah, it's very different. I'd never worked in India as an employee, so I don't know what it's like. How I couldn't compare that. But otherwise, it's I think. Just the level of efficiency and professionalism is a little slow here. So that's a big challenge, but that's also an opportunity.
Okay, fair enough. So you like you said, maybe the efficiency and the professionalism isn't that great. So how have you then, let's say, overcome it with Estoot?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing we focus on at Estoot is our team, and we invest a lot in grooming the people we have, and we don't think of them as someone who's just here for 2 months. We really put the time into training them, and we try to we have gotten trainings online and we pay for them to learn. We give them all the tools we can. They're not only here as an employee, but also taking away a lot more and growing as individuals. So I think that's what kind of has been helping us. Again, it's a challenge, with the level of attrition rate in India, it's pretty high, but we've gotten a lot better over the 2 years, I think. I think now we've had a very solid core team, which has been with us for about a year now.
So it's really interesting because, like I said earlier, there are a lot of firms that do similar stuff to what you do. And I guess that this is now a field that is growing quite rapidly. So who are the employees that you seek out? Can it be anyone, or is it being someone who needs to have, let's say an English degree or an eco degree or something like that?
Anyone really. I don't have a background in marketing, I think marketing is one of those fields, right? It's so dynamic. You can't be taught in college. I've learned this on the job. So it's really someone who has a willingness to learn. That's really it. That's really what we see in employees. Sure, I mean, when you get resumes, you have to look at certain, you have to apply certain filters.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, in terms of content, we try to look for, we have certain colleges we look at. So if it's design, we'll try to look at some colleges. But having said that, we get a lot of people who just call us up and say that,
we're interested.
we saw your company on Insta, we're interested. So we're happy to, a lot of times people are very persistent. They just want to come in for an interview. So we've had some actually people who don't have any sort of background but they just said they really want to do this.
Especially in a field like this, because you get to be creative, right? Something that is lacking, I guess, in other fields where you can go ahead and say, hey, this is my idea. Do you like it or not? So in terms of that, right? How do you weed out creative ideas, something that is so subjective? And I've always wanted to ask this to marketing individuals that how do you identify between, hey, this is going to sell, this is not going to sell? Is that just through experience, or is there some hidden formula that people don't know?
I think it's experience. It's really, and sometimes, I'll have my team come up with the ideas and they're so excited about it, and I'll hear it and I'll be like, no. Or I'm excited about something and I'll be like, guys,
So then actually, why don't you walk us through, let's say there is brand X, you have to make ad for brand X. What would that process look like?
So, I'll just give you an example of a brand that it's a mobile app that we were doing 3-4 ads a week for them. So it's a lot, right? Coming up with creative ideas for 4 creative ideas per week. It was a lot. So that's something, and I think our entire team has been involved in this. I'll go into the room where everyone's sitting and I'll be like, okay guys, anyone, tell me, what do you do at night? What do you do in your free time? So I'll start asking these. A lot of times we'll do these brainstorming sessions, and so initially people were like, why are you asking me this? I'm a graphic designer. Why you ask me where I hang out at night? Because it's a bit of the target market was young people. So we so you try to talk to people and ask them, so what do you do in your free time? What do you enjoy? And then from that you sort of build on to where you want to go. But it's a lot of brainstorming. It's a lot of sometimes it's a lot of watching YouTube ads.
Fair enough. So just to conclude, I just wanted to ask you then, so where do you then see Estoot going in the next couple of years?
So we, like I mentioned, we are trying to grow a lot more internationally. We're trying to get more clients because I think that's the gap that we're trying to fill, where international clients, digital marketing is anything creative is pretty expensive anywhere else in the world. In India, just because of the amount of people we have, it's relatively cheaper. But the quality of the quality is not there yet, at least. And that's what I noticed, because with my first startup, I wanted to hire a social media agency. I just couldn't find someone I like at all. So I think the bridge that we're trying to, the gap that we're trying to bridge is that we want to make sure that we deliver the quality of service which matches any global agency in the world.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay tuned, because after the break, we're going to be having a chat with somebody else from Estoot.
2, 1.
Hi, I'm Vrinda Gupta and I'm one of the directors at Estoot.
Hi Vrinda, thank you also for taking our time from your day to let
No
us
worries at all.
interview you. So how did you get into Estoot? What's your journey within Estoot?
Completely accidental. I don't know if Navi mentioned anything. I actually started off as a freelancer. I had just gotten back from New York. I did my master's there. Not really sure about life direction and whatnot. So I was put in touch with Navi, and she mentioned she needs content help. So at that point I was trying to figure out where I'm really going. So I thought, why not? It's a good way to get my feet wet into marketing. And honestly, one thing led to another. It went from coming here 3 days a week to being here 6 days a week, to the point where Navi was traveling and essentially I was in charge of the company in the meanwhile. So when she got back, she was like, clearly this is working out. Would you like to be partners? And I think we signed the papers in November. I still joke that she made a very strong legal commitment to me that she's very much regretting now. So it's great.
Fair enough. But is this something that you always thought that you would do?
I knew it would be something within communications. Writing is my forte. So I take care of most of the written content. that happens out of Estoot. I always was a massive nerd.
Okay.
So reading, English, that was my jam. So I did my undergrad in English Lit. I initially thought it would be more into publishing. So I was looking into like being a literary agent or working at a publishing house.
Yeah.
I did intern at one of those, and it wasn't it wasn't the experience you would want. It wasn't as dynamic as I would have liked.
Yeah.
So when I got back, I did more PR work initially. Again, it wasn't the kind of creative work you tend to do unless when you're in marketing.
Yeah.
So it kind of just worked out really well.
Okay, so you said you handle mostly the writing work. So what exactly is the writing work that Estoot handles?
Anything. I
Okay.
mean, anything from certain emails. I make sure that our brand language is consistent. If
Yeah.
we're emailing for Estoot versus emailing for a client.
Yeah.
What we do is when we get a new client on board is we kind of figure out who their target market is, what kind of written communication we're going to give out to them. So if the target audience is like tier 2, tier 3 cities, I'm not going to be using westernized slang, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of develop these content guides in terms of the brand language, which we would develop. The brand colors, either we've created them or the client has kind of given us a set standard. We work within that. So then we have those writing guides that we make in-house. So what happens is that even as simple as a caption,
Okay.
we have people who are working on that. I'll just review it, make sure it's in line with what we've been posting, and then we send it out.
Okay, so then what does the creative process look like when, let's say, you're a brand that comes up to you and says, hey, this is roughly the framework that I want.
Okay.
And like, where we're targeting, let's say, tier 2, tier 3 cities. And at that point, how do you then set about, you go to your team like, okay, guys, you need some ideas? Or is it more like, sit back, you try to figure out some things first and then come to your team?
So it's a little more dynamic. Sometimes it's very hard to explain
of
because certain
course.
things are intuitive. But what we would do, it's a lot of research.
Okay.
All that goes into it is a lot of research. So what we would do is, supposing it's a brand and like it's a clothing brand, for instance, right? And they're looking at targeting tier 1 cities. We will then do our research for domestic and international brands that are doing the similar thing. Unless it's a very like out of the ordinary kind of product. Then we'll kind of get an idea of like what that market looks like. If they're targeting a certain clientele, what kind of language are they working, what works, what doesn't work. Our opinion on that as well.
I'm sure like age group that they're
age groups and stuff. So there's a reason they're doing it. We would like to just see like, okay, that's what's out there. How would we kind of transform that for this particular client? Based on then, we then identify certain platforms. Sometimes the client says, I specifically want to be on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Sometimes they come, it's a blank slate. They're like, you tell us. We know nothing. And then we take it from there.
So which side do you prefer? Do you prefer the one where they come with you a blank slate or with more of a framework?
It depends, honestly, on the client.
Okay.
Sometimes if they're very rigid and I think that it fits, I'm like, cool, like go for it. We've had instances when the client's like, I want to do this. And I said, cool, but I personally wouldn't recommend it. Some are very, very receptive. They're like, cool, if you don't think so, we'll back away. We might suggest more content marketing for them versus what they were initially looking at. So what I think with clients nowadays is they're getting there. They're like getting savvier, but especially with older companies, there's just awareness is not as much. So they look at very traditional forms. They won't see what really goes behind posting a post on Facebook, right? So then we can kind of explain that journey to them, and then they're open to a lot more different platforms.
Okay, that's interesting. So when I was doing my research about you guys, I saw that you guys also make your own content, right? So how does that then feature in with your clientele? So you're making content for them, of course, but along the lines of, wouldn't it have been easier to say, hey, this is the idea, and you guys film it yourselves? Why are you bent on producing it yourself?
I'll tell you why, because we've had bad experiences where supposing, and this is internally also, I write a script, and feedback is good, client's super happy, and I have maybe passed it on to an external agency to cast or to produce it. There's always a gap. Because we work with vendors in Mumbai, for instance. Best equipment, like very experienced and stuff. But once they don't know the client as well, there's a miscommunication that can happen. And what you were expecting, what you sold to the client, may not be the end product. So what happens with us handling this in-house is we become the 360 team. We're able to conceptualize the content, shoot it, deliver it. We then know how long it's going to take us. We are able to factor that into our overall strategy. It's not just like a one-off, then we make it a series.
Okay, but that's really interesting. So then I'm assuming then you have like people, like camera person stuff on hire, or they like then just freelance?
So we have an in-house team that we work with. That's part of the full-time team.
Okay.
Depending on the kind of shoots, then we have some freelancers we worked on a regular basis.
Okay.
So then we'd hire.
Okay, so then, I mean, okay, if a client then comes to you and says, hey, no, I really like this agency to shoot it, but we just want the idea from you, are you okay with that? Or do you
We're
guys...
open to it. We would tell them that if we're coming up with the idea,
We'd like to film it
we would
ourselves.
prefer doing it.
Yeah.
With certain clients, they've actually done the opposite, where they've come to us, they've like, this agency gave us an idea. We don't love it. Can you kind of rework it and shoot it yourself? Only because we work with them for a while, so that confidence is built, you know? So we've actually had those experiences a little bit more. We're open to it, but it's not an ideal situation.
Okay.
You know, because again, what the client expects may not be what ends up happening. And we don't want 5 parties blamed for this. Like, it's just, it's a mess. There's no need to get into that.
But that actually begs then a different question, right? So if your client isn't happy, I'm not saying they aren't, but I'm just saying, you know, on the off case that they aren't. So then how do you then truly sell a creative idea? I know this is a bit more of an abstract question, but more along lines of, hey, this is my vision for it. How do you manage to sell it just to a client that way?
That's the thing. There's so many times in which I will have an idea and I'm like, oh, that's fun. But like, if the client doesn't care, you know, at the end of the day, like, you could be communicating with 5 people from the client side, right? Maybe one person just likes experimenting and that's who they are. But at the end of the day, you have to think about the brand, right? My idea could be funny and like silly and just fun, but if it's not really helping the brand, they're going to be like, you do it on your own time. Like,
but I mean, that begs another really interesting question, because you say that, you know, being fun and silly, because I think a lot of at least what marketing is in the 21st century is a lot of like, you know, self-reflectivity of brands and making fun of themselves. That sells really well. Is that always hard to, you know, convince a brand, hey, you know what? You shouldn't take yourself so seriously.
It's a little tricky because some brands are built to be, you know, funny and like self-deprecating and have all of that, you know? Like, think about Durex in India, right? Like, their jam is just making jokes about everything. But if you have like a more traditional company that deals with like light bulbs or something, you know, they're not looking at the consumer. They're looking at a different business. Will an actual business appreciate them making puns on Twitter? Probably not, you know? So that's how you kind of have to differentiate. Those brands are going to be like, yeah, that's funny, that doesn't affect us. So we've had that happen a couple of times where they're just like, we get your point, but it's also about looking at who's reading it. Okay, fair enough. And finally, to conclude, any advice, I asked Navi this also, any advice to people who are looking to apply to Estoot? Honestly, just be willing to learn. Very honestly, like, I started off with almost nothing, like no practical experience in digital marketing, and the only thing I feel like helped me, and which potentially Navi saw, is the willingness to just learn everything. And once you have that, like, everything else, it falls into place. It's fine. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for that. Thanks so much. Thank you.